Good morning. Welcome to This Week at CFSA, our weekly broadcast. This month's topic, we're talking about local food and different topics that sort of address local food from different angles. And this morning, I am joined by Hannah Dankbar, the Local Foods Program Manager for North Carolina Cooperative Extension. And we're going to be talking about some frequently asked questions regarding local food, as well as going over a little bit of terminology and hopefully doing some myth busting related to local food questions. So please feel free to put your comments, or if you have your own questions, put them in the chat and we'll do our best to address them. So we'll go ahead and well, Hannah, if you want to introduce yourself first and maybe just give a little background on the local foods program.
Yeah. Morning, everybody. As Mary Beth said, I'm Hannah Dankbar. I work statewide for North Carolina Cooperative Extension. The goal of my program is really to promote the production, marketing, and consumptions of food that is grown, caught, and raised within the state, which is really exciting. It means I get to meet a lot of great farmers and food business owners and even consumers and help do education around the food system and also provide technical assistance for a lot of exciting projects that are going on across the state.
Awesome. So we have a list of frequently asked questions, and we're going to go through them and hopefully answer some of your questions as well. So the first question that we kind of hear a lot, or at least maybe it's an assumption that's made by folks who are purchasing local, which is local food the same as organic? And is all local food sustainable?
Yeah, so one thing about local foods is that we don't have a set definition of what it means necessarily. There are some like geographic definitions, and even talking to consumers, a lot of them will define local foods about who they buy their food from. So neither one of those things have anything to do with how the food is actually produced. So we can't guarantee that all local food is organic or even sustainably raised. We can't make any guarantees about production practices. But one thing we do encourage is within local food markets, you have that opportunity to interact directly with your farmers typically, or at least find out who they are if you're buying from like a food hub or other local market. And a lot of farmers are more than happy to tell you about their production practices. During COVID, a lot of farmers are going online and are posting their farm stories and a little bit about their farms online. So if you're interested in learning about a specific farm, either talking to them individually at your farmer's market or looking at their online profile to find out what sorts of practices they use is a really easy way to find that out.
And so the next question is local food healthier than non-local food?
So again, we can't really say local food is healthier. What we do know is that in places that have local food markets, there are some positive health outcomes. But we can't say that one necessarily causes the other. Local food markets are a tool that communities can use to promote health. So markets can be used in conjunction with like trails and other recreational places to encourage healthy behaviors. There also is some research that shows that people who buy from local markets or grow their own produce, they're more likely to eat more produce, so more fruits and vegetables. They're also more likely to eat a wider variety of fruits and vegetables and incorporate them more throughout their diets. So that's why things like community gardens, school gardens are really important because it exposes people to different types of produce. The school gardens are great because it's getting kids exposed to more types of food.
So maybe it's not necessarily the food itself is more nutritious or healthier, but folks who are more exposed to the local food are more inclined to eat those vegetables and thus have a healthier diet.
Yeah. If you have access to something, you might be a little bit more likely to eat it. I know, like, for me personally, I make sure to keep my fridge stocked with all sorts of produce, because then when I am hungry and want something, I'm more likely to go grab that, as opposed to like keeping my pantry stocked with like Oreos or like other types of food. So if it's there, people will buy it and eat it.
I hear that.
Yes.
Although I both have, I think, Oreos and produce, so a healthy balance.
Yeah, my pantry probably isn't quite as healthy as what I think it is.
So it's kind of a similar question, but is local food better for the environment because it travels fewer food miles?
So I think that this is actually the question that we hear the most frequently. And the answer is a little bit convoluted. I actually try to get people not to promote food miles. So for transportation, or within agriculture, actually, transportation only accounts for about 11% of emissions. There's more energy used in production, processing, packaging. So those are better areas to focus on if you're looking to reduce emissions. What we know is that efficiency actually matters a little bit more than miles traveled, the distance. So we can't say that like less miles traveled is more efficient when we can like pack a semi full of food and get it to somewhere else. That's actually more efficient and has less emissions. So that's a little, it's a misperception that a lot of people have. There are other ways that local foods promote sustainability. Regenerative agricultural practices to produce food. So getting at that production side of things is really beneficial. And then also looking at how food is packaged. Like I know a lot of local producers will use paper instead of plastic. That can be like composted or recycled or something like that. So there are ways. Eating healthy for the environment or eating local for the environment is still very possible. But food miles is a little bit of a misconception.
That's good to know. A good point about regenerative practices, because even larger farms who use those practices might also ship their produce, and local farms might not necessarily use those practices on their farm. So
yeah. So that's another opportunity to talk to your local farmers and let them know that you really value environmental benefits and find out what they're doing to address
that. The next question is regarding food safety, which always a fun topic, but is local food safer than non-local food?
So this is another thing that we can't guarantee. We can't guarantee specific practices are used within local food systems. However, if somebody has specific food safety concerns, you know who to talk to. Like you can go directly to the farmer and find out exactly what practices they are using, what certifications they have. Some farmers will get the Good Agricultural Practices, GAP certification, and that's a food safety certification. So you can find out what they're using. If you have specific questions about food safety, you go directly to the source, as opposed to like if you go to a larger grocery store, there's no way to find out how that food was managed. So that is a benefit, but we can't necessarily say it is more safe. You just have better access to information.
Better access to information, and I think also there's like the difference between safety and risk, right? So it's hard to make food safer, but you can purchase from farms where they have minimized the risk of getting someone ill from the practices that they used. And like you were saying, it's a lot easier to ask the farmer that you're purchasing from what sort of food safety practices and good agricultural practices are you using to minimize?
Oh. Yeah, there aren't any farmers out there who want people to get sick from their food. So everybody is doing their best to keep people safe. Yes, Mary Beth did freeze.
Am I back?
Oh, yes. Hey, welcome back.
Okay. I was lost in the ether there somewhere. All right. So the next question is a big one, and I think it's the one that is promoted almost as much as, you know, is local food better for the environment because it travels less food miles? But I think it's also one that's a little harder to understand. But is buying local food good for the economy?
Yeah, we do have some research that shows that it is. So one, when you buy from either directly from a farmer or from a local food business, that money is staying in your community. So that's helping keep farmland in agriculture. That's giving money to people who live in your community, which are all good things. And we also know about this thing called the multiplier effect. So if somebody goes to a local food business and spends $1, we have research that shows that about 32 to 90 cents is spent at another local business within the community. So shopping at those local markets does increase business and revenue for other local businesses, which is great, especially as so many of our small businesses are still working on recovering from the pandemic, still enduring the pandemic, really.
And there's a great resource, because it's kind of I think it's sometimes a difficult concept to wrap your head around, because the multiplier effect, there's so much that goes into that. But there is a local food economics calculator that you can kind of see if that works. Put in sort of like how much money you've spent and how much local impact on local food, and then how much local impact that's actually had. And it's pretty cool to see. So then the last one is this last question is a really big, broad one, and I don't think we could spend a whole day talking about it. And I don't think we would really get all the answers, but how does local food help my community?
So this is, people write like research dissertations on this, but a lot of people also live it. Community gardens, farmers markets, just other local food businesses, they're all gathering spaces for community members to come together with a common goal of producing and distributing healthy food for their neighbors. So that builds a sense of community. We've seen that it helps people get engaged with their community with something with over a shared value. So that alone is huge. And we know that there are people who don't have equal access to food. So these community-based projects and looking out for our neighbors is a huge benefit of local food. That's just like the surface answer we could. Yeah.
If anyone has their own questions that they want Hannah to address, you can put them in the chat. I'm also going to share a resource that was recently maybe published or at least updated in 2018, just about local food systems, and then clarifying current research, and it addresses some of the questions that we've talked about here. Let's see if that's going through. But Hannah, you had some resources that you were going to tell folks about.
Yeah, so for folks who are interested in either learning more about local food systems or looking for like volunteer opportunities or anything just to get involved with their own local food systems, We have a few programs. One, I recommend talking to your county extension office. There's programs like Master Gardeners that can connect you with community gardens. We also have this program called the Extension Master Food Volunteer Program, where you can do more of this food system. You go through some training. So we actually address all the questions that we talked about today in some of those materials. And then you get to volunteer with local food programs and projects with your extension office. And if you're interested in just learning more, we do offer a series of online courses. We have 3 courses about the food system. One is a very foundational course. One is about moving food through a supply and value chain. And another one is just like triple bottom line community development. So that is out there for folks who are looking to just learn more about their food system or maybe get some training to incorporate it into some of their either professional or community work.
I can speak very highly of the online classes. I'm curious, could you, before we hop off, could you give an example of like a project, volunteer project that someone would participate in?
Yeah, so I can give a COVID era one and then a more in-person one. So COVID era, we've been talking to our master food volunteers about building local food directories with their counties. So helping connect consumers with producers, because people need to know where to buy local food in order to actually make that purchase. So we just did a webinar with some volunteers about how to go about doing that. And then for some of the in-person ones, these sort of vary county by county a little bit. But one thing we're going to try to do more of is implementing some donation stations at farmers markets so people can buy food from local farmers and donate it directly to local organizations to get it to people who need it.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, and all that information is available on the extension website. So I hope that
okay.
is useful.
And we'll drop those resources in the chat when this broadcast is over. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, Hannah. And we'll put those resources in the chat for folks. And if they want to contact you, they can feel free to reach out. But thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.